Sham Sharada Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gura Shri Charanarvindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gura Shri Charanarvindam Vande Gura Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanma Niramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanma Niramajanado Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shiradhikama Gavayara Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupanamna Shiradhikama Gavayara Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupanamna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Ne kunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Jukti Apekshaniya Nikunjayo no Radhikeli Siddhai Jaya Vijukti Tatra Tirakya Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Ativalabhasya Sakshat Haritvena Shamasta Shastre Uktastatha Bhavyataiva Sadhuvi Sakya Haritena Shastre Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dayam Subham Tasya Yasastri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Dhyayam Stubham Tasya Yasastri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Charanarvrindam Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Bhaktata Desha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Viyadvaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudan Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava, Radha Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Pramanande Haribo. Jaya Vishwapar Paramansa Prabhajakacharya Ashtottara Sarasishimad ISKCON Pratishta Vividhi Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Data Patita Pavana. His Divine Grace Abhacharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakti Raghunatha Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Kuri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Pramanam Sankirtanika Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrana Avatar Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Juga Dharma Hari Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Radha Kund Syamakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Maturdam Ki Jai. The Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Shri Shri Maya Purnavadup Eka Chakradam Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu. Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karni Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Bolo Shri Maturadharani Ki Jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gaura.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Ladadaine. Hiranyakashi Purvasahar. Shilatankanakalaye.
Shilatankanakalaye.
Ito Narsinga, Parato Narsinga.
Ita Narsinga, Parato Narsinga.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsinga.
Jato Jato Jami Tato Narsinga.
Bahir Narsinga, Hirdaye Narsinga.
Bahir Narsinga, Hirdaye Narsinga.
Narsingamadim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasingamadim Sharanam Prapade.
Tava Kar Kavala Vare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Vringa Keshavadhirta Narehari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare.
Kabakara Kamala Vare Naka Adbhuta Shringa Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Vringa Keshavadhirta Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare
Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev.
Jaya Nishinga Dev, Jaya Nishinga Dev, Nishinga Dev, Jaya Nishinga Dev.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Bhakta Prahlad, Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada.
Jai Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jaya Prabhupada.
बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रहलाद की जय, प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय।
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavatai Namo Namah. Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavatai Namo Namah. Brindaye Tulasi Devai Priyaye Sivasvachacha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Bilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Jo Tomara Charanala Taravancha Purna Ho
Chitamara Sharananaya Taravancha Purna.
Kripa Kore Koro Tare Vrindavana Vasi
Tumi Kripa Kori Karatare Vrindavana Vasi.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Morae Abila Milas Kunje Diova
Morae Avila Vilasa Kunje Diyava.
Nayana Meri Bosada Jugala Ruparasi
Aminayane Vivasada Jugala Ruparasi.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna preyasi Namo
Vedana dwara Sakiranugata kora
Ene vedana dhara Sakirayano katakara
Sevadikara diye Koroni jadasi
Hari kara diye Karani jadasi
Dina Krishna dasa ho Ye namo raho
Dina Krishna daseka Eye namo
Radha Govinda preme Sadahena basi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi
Namo Namoha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namoha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo
Yani Kani Janmani Brahma Hatyadi Kani Cha Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakshina Pade Pade
Janika Nishapapani Brahma Hatyadi Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahma Hatyadi Kani Cha Tani Tani Prana Syanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Janika Nishapapani Brahma Hatyadi Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahma Hatyadi Cha Tani Tani Prana Syanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Janika Nishapapani Brahma Hatyadi Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulasi Maharani, Jaya Tulasi Maharani, Jaya Tulasi Maharani, Jaya Tulasi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Brinde Devi, Jaya Brinde Devi, Jaya Brinde Devi, Jaya Brinde Devi.
Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Brinda Devi.
Jai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always stream in love Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Kam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanamajanam Bhava Mahada Bhagni Vapanam Shri Akari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadu Jivanam Ananda Ambudi Varnanam Padipadam Purnamrita Sharanam Bhagavad Paravijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Drisitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamati Durdhaivam Idrisham Yajanin Anuragaha Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadishakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatira Oinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Paritama Vishame Babham Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Dhuli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galarashru Dharya Vadanam Gadagarudhaya Gira Pulakai Chitam Bapukada Tavanamagrane Bhavishyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakshusha Prarasaitam Sunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virainame Aslishava Padaratam Pinashtuma Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Jatha Tathava Vidadaturam Patu Matpranatastu Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tvishin Maha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Patsyatyari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are no different hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that devotes my service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some rather, I am falling this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if his handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhistakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which offered in Vedas as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in holy names and to maintain understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devoted to the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyaiva cha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo. Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrindi ki jai. Shri Mangala Charan Shri Guru Vandana ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakchurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jotapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gaurvani Pracharine Nivrishesha Shunnavadi Patsyatari Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavana Videvi Deitaya Kripabdvaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjujala Primadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shimurtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Siddhanta Dvantarine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchaviragya Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambhude Padabhujayate Nama Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumitsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvise Namaha Panchatattamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanto Radha Kanto Namostute Jayatam Suratapangor Mama Mandamatir Gatir Massarvasya Param Bhojo Radha Madanamona Divya Vindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Singasanastu Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Pristali Visheva Manushmarami Shmara Sarasaram Bhivam Shvato Tatastita Karshan Venu Sanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Brusavano Suterevi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gauru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Brahmasamiti ki jai Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadi Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karana Chintamani Prakarsat Matsakalpa Riksha Laksha Ritesa Surabi Ravi Palyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kunantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandara Pakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamadyavam Siratnam Ganam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamanchi Bangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Ritimanti Pasyanti Pantikayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigyahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlavam Adurlavam Atma Bhaktu Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsar Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayitam Jagadanda Kotim Yastaktirasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarasta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diva Manajasta Tayva Samprapya Rup Mahimasana Yanabusa Suktarya Mevinikuma Patitastuvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavita Bistabirya Evini Jirupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evini Visata Kilakma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hudayesa Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Chintya Gunaswarupa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nanavatana Makarud Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabha Paramam Pumamyo Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhuto Jagadanda Koti Koti Srisesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Bina Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Vida Vitayamanam Sadva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Matayama Asuya Praninam Pratifilam Sunatam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Jidamni Tali Tasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute 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 Te Prabhavani Chaya Vitashtayena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Sistista Tipalaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chaya Vyasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Chanarupam Apyasya Chitesta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Kanta Ladi Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjaya Te Nahita Tapritakastetu Yasambhutama Pitatasam Paitikayat Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure David Dasantaram Abhyupeta Dipaya Te Vidhetu Samana Dharma Yastadra Kevi Vishnu Tayabyati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnavajali Bhajistismi Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saruma Kupa Adhara Sakti Mavalamya Paransamurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Asyaika Nisvasit Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalabhisesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakaleshani Jesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitad Bradatra Brahma Yesa Jagadanda Vidhanu Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palavi Yugam Vinidayakam Batuande Pranamasamayesa Ganadi Raja Vignam Dehantam Almasha Jagatraya Segamovinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamabu Marudisasha Kalasta Tatman Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vivanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Desesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagavati Hastajiva Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastendra Gopa Matavinda Mahoswakarm Bandana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidahati Kintuchi Bhakti Bhaja Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kamasa Japrana Adibiti Vatsalya Mohoguru Gurava Sevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadrisam Taramapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Tumabu Mishchitama Niganama Yitayam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanama Bhivam Sipriyasa Kichiranandam Jati Parama Pita Daswadya Mapicha Sayatra Shiradi Vihisavidi Surabi Vyasta Suma Nimesar Dakya Vavajitiya Natravit Samaya Bhajesvita Dvisham Tamaham Ihugola Kamitiam Vidanta Stay Santakshiti Varacha Rakatipa Shiguru Vastaka prayers Kijay. Spiritual Masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence out of my respectful base, not the lotus feet of such spiritual master who's an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting holy name, dancing next, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves from my respectful base. Not the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual man, chanting holy name, dancing next, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves Offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet, such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship, Shishi Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet, as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is lit, chewed, drunk, and set. And when the spiritual master sees that the devotees are eating prasadam, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet, as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited concept pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet, as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance to Lotus Feet, as such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet, as such a spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 50 again. Tvamna Suranam Asisan Vayanam Kutasta Adya Purusha Purana Tvam Deva Sakyam Gunakarma Yono Ritas Tvadrajayam Kavim Adadeja. Tvam, your lordship, na, of us, Suranam, of the demigods, Asi, you are, Sa Anvayanam, with different gradations, Kutasta, one who is unchanged, Adya, without any superior, Purusha, the founder person, Purana, the oldest, who has no other founder. Tvam, you, Deva, O Lord, Satyam, unto the energy. Guna Karma Yona, unto the cause of the material modes and activities. Reta, semen of birth. 2, indeed. Ajayam, for begetting. Kavim, the total living entities. Adade, initiated. Aja, one who is unborn. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. You are the original personal founder of all the demigods and the orders of different gradations. Yet, you are the oldest and are unchanged. O Lord, you have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities, yet you are unborn. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Lord, the original person, is the father of all other living entities. Beginning from Brahma, the personality from whom all other living entities in different gradations of species are generated. Yet the Supreme Father has no other father. Every one of the living entities of all grades, up to Brahma, the original creature of the universe, is begotten by a father. But he, the Lord, has no father. When he descends on the material plane, out of his causeless mercy, he accepts one of his great devotees as his father, to keep pace with the rules of the material world. But since he is the Lord, he is always independent in choosing who will become his father. For example, the Lord came out of a pillar in his incarnation as Narasingha-deva, and by the Lord's causeless mercy, Ahalya came out of a stone by the touch of the lotus feet of his incarnation as Lord Sri Rama. He is also the companion of every living entity as the Supersoul, but he is unchanged. The living entity changes his body in the material world, but even when the Lord is in the material world, he is ever unchanged. That is his prerogative. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.3, the Lord impregnates the external or material energy, and thus the total living entities later come out in different gradations, beginning from Brahma, the first demigod, down to the insignificant ant. All gradations of living entities are manifested by Brahma and the external energy, but the Lord is the original Father of everyone. The relationship of every living being with the Supreme Lord is certainly one of son and father, and not one of equality. Sometimes in love, the son is more than the father, but the relationship of father and son is one of the superior and the subordinate. Every living entity, however great he may be, even up to demigods like Brahma and Indra, is an eternally subordinate servitor of the Supreme Father. The Mahatattva principle is the governing source of all the modes of material nature, and the living entities take birth in the material world in bodies supplied by the Mother Nature in terms of their previous work. The body is a gift of material nature, but the soul is originally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. You are the original personal founder of all the demigods and the orders of different gradations. Yet, you are the oldest and are unchanged, O Lord. You have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities, yet you are unborn. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. So this verse and purport have a tremendous amount of significant information, and to unravel it requires some time, because when I say unravel it, to explain it requires some time, because there are a lot of major points with deep histories behind them. In any case, as Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, 2nd verse, Na me vidu suragana prabhavana maharsayo aham adirhi devanam maharsinam chasarvasaha. Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. For in every respect, I am the source of the demigods and the sages. So we see why there may be confusion about Krishna, even amongst the demigods. Although they're supposed to be such elevated devotees, and they are elevated devotees, but as long as one has even one material desire, everything else in their thought process will be corrupted or stunted. So here Krishna is clearly saying that the demigods and great sages, they don't know Krishna's origin or opulences. For in every respect, I'm the source of the demigods and the sages. So how can you know Krishna's origins when he is fully eternal in the past, the present, and the future? And everybody else has a father. Krishna doesn't have a father and mother. He is the source of everything. Now, this is very confusing. One time I gave a lecture in the hills of Berkeley, where a lot of rich people live, and it was in a house of a very wealthy man who was let's say he was a disciple of the famous Mayavadi in South India. I'll think of his name in a second. And his father was a direct disciple. He was a young boy at that time. And I'm not sure if he got initiated or not, but he considered himself a disciple of this big Mayavadi. And anyway, he was also the organizer of the Mensa Club in Berkeley, California, where there are a lot of intellectuals there. A lot of the research for the atomic bomb happened in Berkeley, California, in the Lawrence laboratories. in the Berkeley Hills, which is the same place where this man was living. And anyway, the Mensas are the people that have the so-called, have the highest IQs in the world. And to get into their elite club, you have to have a lot of qualifications to get in there. And anyway, I was talking to a whole group of them. And obviously, they challenged me. And they said, well, you believe that everything has a source. And therefore, what's the source of Krishna? You say Krishna is God, but he should have a source also, because you believe everything has a source. Now, see, that's a trick statement. Yeah, we believe everything in the material world has a source. That is Krishna. But in the spiritual world, everyone is eternal. And we're eternal also. We've always said that we are co-existent with Krishna as far as eternity goes, because we're part and parcel of the Lord, and he has no beginning and no end. So the way, see, they're very clever people, the Mensa people. They start with a statement which is not true, but in one context, it is true. In another context, it's not true. So in the context of the material world, it is true that everything has a source. But in the context of the spiritual world, there's only one source, that's Krishna, and he has no source. He's eternal, and we, as part and parcel of Krishna, are coexistent with him. We are also eternal in the past, in the present, and in the future. So unless we make that differentiation, they win the argument. So, therefore, you have to explain the difference between the material world and the spiritual world. The material world has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's cyclic, so it goes on over and over again, beginning, middle, end. But the spiritual world is eternally existent. It never began at a certain time, and it'll never end at a certain time. This is extremely important to know. Otherwise, you will lose the discussion with the Mensa member, because they figure out ways to defeat believers in God. And because even in Christianity, there's not completely, let's say, pure philosophy. They get many things wrong about God. Therefore, they're easily defeated by the Mensa people, right? And we will be defeated too unless we understand our philosophy. So this is explaining the philosophy. This verse today, and many fundamental points are being made in it. But if we go back to the 10th chapter, 2nd verse, Prabhupada in the purport says, as stated in the Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. No one is greater than him. He is the cause of all causes. Here it is also stated by the Lord personally that he is the cause of all the demigods and sages. Well, that's what this verse today is saying in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why this supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being. In other words, he's not an ordinary being, but he looks like it, right? Because he only had, when he first appears, he appears in his Narayana form with 4 arms, and his mother freaks out and says, "Oh my God, don't stay in this form, because if Kamsa comes, he'll know you're the supreme personality of God. It just looked like an ordinary child." So to assuage or to soothe the hysteria, not hysteria, but the anxiety of Mother is Devaki. He transforms into his form, which is the original form, as Krishna with 2 arms. Okay, So even the demigods are confused about the two-armed form of Krishna. In any case, even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why this supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such wonderful, uncommon activities. One should know then that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. That's a very important point. At one point in our movement, some people thought that getting PhDs is the right way to go to be educated. Well, there's a right way and a wrong way in every issue. A right way and a wrong way in every issue. So, at one point, Prabhupada did encourage Bhakti Sri Damodar Maharaj to get his PhD. And he did. Why? Because he wanted him to be able to speak on the level, on the same level as the scientists with their language, but to present Krishna consciousness, which is what he did his whole life after he got his PhD. He didn't do any research. Of course, while he was getting his PhD, he had to do some research, but after that, he didn't get involved in any research. He just got involved in talking to other scientists on their level, because he was a PhD, they are PhDs, and but he was presenting Krishna consciousness. And the same thing with Sadhupruta. He also did the same thing. He got his PhD. Prabhupada encouraged him, and in mathematics, and he also spent most of the rest of his life just preaching Krishna consciousness, but with their language. See, the scientists have their own language and their own methodologies of doing things and presenting things. However, there were other devotees later on who pursued PhDs, and many of them are trying to preach. I'm not saying they don't preach, but their effectiveness has been somewhat, I would say, compromised. Not all of them, but some of them, compromised by the academic atmosphere in which they got their PhD. The academic atmosphere when you get a PhD is usually, unless you have a really good PhD advisor, they have to be very careful about what they say and write, because they can be censured or they can be penalized for becoming, in a sense, too spiritually minded in their work. Now, this is not everywhere, but in a lot of places it's like that. So, anyway, Prabhupada's point here is, even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why this supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such wonderful, uncommon activities. One should know then that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. Even the demigods and the great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the three qualities of material nature, or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. Okay, so this is a big point. And if the demigods themselves don't really understand, Krishna, then how are the mundane scientists and philosophers going to understand? See? They have no chance at all. That's why we're talking about Einstein the last couple of days, and we're going to continue in a little while. So anyway, here the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme. One should know this, although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present. He nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The conception of God as some ruling power, or as the impersonal Brahman, can be reached by persons who are in the inferior energy of the Lord, but the personality Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position. So, this is why Prabhupada, at initiation, he says, do you promise not to engage in meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication? Yes. And you will chant every day 16 good rounds, and preferably in the Brahma Muhurta. I mean, it's not absolutely mandated, but it's preferable because there's no interruptions at that time. It's early in the morning when most people are sleeping. So, why did Prabhupada insist on this? Well, not only he insisted, the Vaishnava Acharyas in the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, because one cannot understand anything about Krishna unless they come to the transcendental position. Like Krishna, you can only understand him if you're on the transcendental position like the Lord. And how do you come to the transcendental position of the Lord? You have to follow the regulative principles strictly and chant Hare Krishna, and easily you can come to that position, easily. But if you don't follow strictly and don't chant really good rounds every day, we will always remain on the mundane level. So that's why Lord Chaitanya made it easy to come to the transcendental level. He said, Iha yasya harir dasya karmana manasajira akilasvapu astasu. He says, one who uses his mind, senses, intelligence, body, and everything in the service of Krishna, Iha yasya harir dasya karmana manasajira akilasvapi avastasu jivan mukta soichite. They become jivan mukta, a liberated soul, even in this body, even in this world. So using everything in the service of Krishna is the easy way to come to the transcendental position, above the influence of the modes of material nature, not disturbed by the passage of time, and always engaged in Krishna's service. So therefore, you can begin to understand Krishna. But if we are still on the material level, we think that Krishna is our order supplier, I want this, I want that, then we won't really understand anything about the Lord. Okay. Because most men cannot understand Krishna in his actual situation, out of his causeless mercy, he descends to show favor to such speculators. Yet, despite the Supreme Lord's uncommon activities, these speculators, due to contamination in the material energy, still think that the impersonal Brahman is the Supreme. Only the devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that he is Krishna. So, it says, only the devotees who are fully surrendered. If we are partially surrendered, we will not understand. You have to be fully surrendered. And what is the sign that you're fully surrendered? Is that your main interest in life is pleasing Guru and Krishna. Guru is the external manifestation of Krishna's mercy, and Krishna internally is present as the Chaita Guru, the Guru in the heart, or Paramatma. So, therefore, it says, only the devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that he is Krishna. The devotees of the Lord do not bother about the impersonal Brahman conception of God. Their faith and devotion bring them to surrender immediately unto the Supreme Lord, and out of the causeless mercy of Krishna, they can understand Krishna. No one else can understand him. So even great sages agree. What is Atma? What is the Supreme? It is He whom we have to worship. So, worship, bowing down to the Lord and having darshan and serving the Lord by preaching, learning to become a pujari, serving the Lord personally, and trying to please the senses of the Lord with arti and dressing and bathing and all these things. So at that point, when we come to the point of worshiping the Lord, now worship means you're very reverent and you're always doing things that are only pleasing to the Lord and strictly following the regulative principles and chanting very nicely. Then you come on the transcendental level. You have to come to the transcendental level in order to understand the Lord. As long as we're anchored in lust, anger, greed, we're not going to be able to understand anything. Yeah, you might say, "Oh, I understand this or that," but you'll see it's very artificial. Okay, so, and therefore the next verse says, Yo mamajam anadim cha veti loka maheshwaram asamudha samartyesu sarvapapai pramuchyate. He who knows me, Krishna says, as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the Supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is freed from all sins. Now, every one of us appears to be born, right? But Krishna is unborn. He is the source of everything. He doesn't have a father and mother. But yet, when he comes down to help people become Krishna conscious, it appears as if he has a mother and father. Right? So all these things are bewildering to the atheists and the karmis because they're still on the material level. Therefore, they cannot understand that Krishna has infinite energies. If he wants to accept a mother and father, he can. That doesn't in any way compromise his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He doesn't appear with a material body. He's not conceived through sperm and ovum and all that stuff. But can we accept this? Well, yeah, you can accept it if you're free of sinful activities and desires. But if we still have material desires, it's very difficult to accept these points. Okay, so in the purport to 10.3, which we have read before, but we'll look at it one more time because it explains a lot of things about Krishna. It says that the Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. Okay, so that's a big statement right there. As long as we have any material attachment, it can be to our house, it can be to a car, it can be to children, it can be to parents, it can be to neighbors, it can be to politicians, it can be to movie stars, it can be to cricket stars, it can be to baseball players or football players or singers or dancers or rich people, whatever. Even one material desire makes us unqualified to really understand Krishna. Okay, and it says here, the Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. So obviously the Lord has no material attachment, although he may seem to. Therefore it says, the conditioned souls are changing their bodies, but the body is not changeable. But his body is not changeable. So Krishna, even when he's 125 years old, talking to Arjuna, he looks like a 16-year-old kid or a teenager. Right? He doesn't get old. So therefore the Catholics had got it all wrong. They painted a picture of God looking like an old man in the Sistine Chapel. So you see how even the Catholic Church, even up until today, they still consider God having a white beard and wrinkles and an old guy. Right? Even when he comes to the material world, he comes as the same unborn Therefore, in the 4th chapter, it is said that the Lord, by his internal potency, is not under the inferior material energy, but is always in the superior energy. Another big point. It's very difficult to understand. Even though he's in the material world, he's not affected by the material nature. He's always in his spiritual nature, which is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And he's, eternity, bliss, and knowledge. In his form, his body is made of Satchitananda Vigraha, a form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. This is something people can't understand. They say, no, he's got 2 arms, he's got 2 legs, he got 1 nose. He doesn't have 4 noses. He's like us. He's one of us. He might look like that, but he's not. So Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reactions. One must be liberated from all sinful activities to be in the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Only by devotional service can he be known, and not by any other means, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. So not the Hatha Yoga, not the Raja Yoga, not the Astanga Yoga, not the Kriya Yoga. They're not going to understand Krishna. It's only by Bhakti Yoga. Yeah. So, therefore, many yogis, and even though they're very powerful yogis like Durvasa Muni, they don't understand Krishna. So, what do you expect of the scientists and the philosophers, mundane philosophers and mundane scientists? They're not going to understand anything about God, and we see that. That's why we're talking about Einstein. He was supposed to be the smartest guy in the world during his time, but as far as understanding his relationship with Krishna, he was the dumbest. He was dumber than the uneducated people who believe in God. Believe that. He's dumber than them. So he's not really such a great person. Okay, so then it says, if Krishna is known as the son of Devaki, then how can he be unborn? That is also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. When he appeared before Devaki and Vasudeva, he was not born as an ordinary child. He appeared in his original form. That means as Narayana with 4 arms. And then he transformed himself into an ordinary child. But he's not an ordinary child. It looks like an ordinary child, but he's not. If you look on the bottom of his feet, you'll see he has these different signs on the bottom of his feet. And whenever he was walking, you could see those imprints in Vrindavan. And nobody else has something like that. And he had the Kaustuba jewel, and he had all these different things on his body that differentiated him. But for the idiots, he looked something a little bit ordinary because he's got 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 nose and 2 ears and 2 eyes. So they say, well, he's like one of us, When he's lifting Govardhan Hill, they say, well, man, we could probably do that too if we go to the gym and work out, So they find so many ways of discarding any belief in the supernatural power of Krishna. And then it says, anything done under the direction of Krishna is transcendental. It cannot be contaminated by material reactions, which may be auspicious or inauspicious. The conception that there are things auspicious and inauspicious in the material world is more or less a mental concoction, because there is nothing auspicious in the material world. Now, this would be debated fiercely by the karmis. What? Nothing auspicious in the material world? What about the rising sun? What about, Elon Musk, so rich, and he has so many girlfriends, and he has so many kids, and so many cars, and there's nothing auspicious? So they would argue against this point, but it's a fact. There's nothing auspicious in the material world. What's auspicious about birth, old age, disease, and death? Nothing. It's all inauspicious. What's auspicious about war? There's nothing auspicious about it. It's just like now, in this war in Russia and Ukraine, so many people are getting killed, and a lot of people, are trying to avoid the war. Like a lot of young men in Russia are trying to leave Russia and hide somewhere, like in Finland or Greenland or somewhere, so they don't have to go to the war. The same thing happened during the Vietnam War. A lot of young men and women tried to stay out of the army because they didn't want to get killed. So there's nothing auspicious in the material world. But yet, we'll argue that there are auspicious things. The truth should be spoken. Okay, so then it says, everything is inauspicious because the very material world, very material nature is inauspicious. We simply imagine it to be auspicious. Real auspiciousness depends on activities in Krishna consciousness and full devotion and service. And when it says full devotion, it doesn't mean part-time devotion. Oh, I'll do this on Saturday, but I won't do it the rest of the week. No, it's full devotion. Therefore, if we at all want our activities to be auspicious, then we should work under the directions of the Supreme Lord. Such directions are given in authoritative scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and from a bona fide spiritual master. Because the spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Lord, his direction is directly the direction of the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master, saintly persons, and scriptures direct in the same way. In other words, there's not going to be any difference. If someone is a bona fide spiritual master, there's not going to be any difference in the way they speak and teach than the way Prabhupada spoke and taught, and the way Krishna speaks and teaches. There's not going to be any difference. The transcendental attitude of the devotee in the performance of activities is actually that of renunciation, and this is called sannyasa. As stated in the first verse of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one who acts as a matter of duty because he has been ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, and who does not seek shelter in the fruits of his activities, anasrita karma phalam, is a true renouncer. Anyone acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord is actually a sannyasi and a yogi, and not the man who has simply taken the dress of the sannyasi or a pseudo-yogi. So therefore, men and women become sannyasis, not by dress, but by actions, by their service, in devotional service, by not having any interest outside of Krishna. But see, if you have only interest in Krishna, then you have everything. Then you have an interest in everything, because Krishna contains everything. So this is what's misunderstood. People think, oh, if I do everything for Krishna, then I will be antisocial. I won't know how to socialize with others. No, that's not true. We go out socializing more than other people. Most people have a small, let's say, number of people that they socialize with. We're socializing with everybody. We're going out there in Sankirtan and distributing food and to all kinds of people and talking to all kinds of people. We socialize more than the karmis do. Right? So therefore, this idea of, oh, my child is only interested in Krishna, he won't know or she won't know how to socialize. This is what many Indian parents say. But that's nonsense. If your child is coming out on Sankirtan, if your child is regularly engaged in preaching, they're going to socialize more than the other kids, because most people have a limited group that they socialize with. See? And that's one reason I joined Krishna consciousness, because I realized I was involved with just a very limited group, which is my, the group I was born into. And then everybody outside of that group, I sort of ignored, until I came to Krishna consciousness. Then all of a sudden, I started socializing with all kinds of people, going out on Sankirtan every day, speaking to all kinds of people, and preaching, and coming into contact with so many people I would have never had anything to do with before I came to Krishna consciousness. I would have avoided them, because they were not part of my people. My people. It's the way people talk. These are my people, right? But actually, we're all Krishna's people, right? Okay, so this is very interesting. You see how Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are very closely aligned together. There's no dichotomy between the two. Okay, so therefore, another big point, Prabhupada talks about how the Shringadev came out of a pillar. Does it say that he was born? No. When he asked Prahlad, "Where's your God? I want to kill him. I can't kill you, I'll kill your God." So Prahlad Maharaj said, "Well, he's everywhere." I said, "Everywhere? Is he in this column right here?" He said, "Yes." So he smashes the column with his sword, and out comes Nrsingadev. So whoever heard of being born from a column, right? So and then Ahalya. Well, Ahalya, she was a very saintly lady, but she made some little mistake once, and it wasn't her fault. It was Indra came and copulated with her, and she didn't really want that, but it happened. And when her husband found out, he cursed her to become a stone. But when Lord Rama came to the ashram of Ahalya and her husband, she was a stone, and he touched her, and she came back alive again. So, therefore, he says, Ahalya came out of a stone by the touch of the lotus feet of his incarnation as Lord Sri Rama. Okay, so he is also, or Krishna is also the companion of every living entity as super soul, but he is unchanged. So all these points that are being made here are extremely significant if we want to be Krishna conscious and really understand something about Krishna. However, it's easy to gloss over. Look that up, gloss over. Gloss over all these fine fundamental points and say, well, I read the Bhagavatam, but you glossed over it. What's it mean? Where's the microphone? Yes.
The meaning of
Your microphone's not on. Yeah, it's good.
the meaning of gloss over. To treat or describe, in parenthesis, something such as a serious problem or error as if it were not important.
Okay, so that means there's something serious,
Yeah.
but when you gloss over it, it's as if it's not important.
It's not that important, yeah.
So you don't really pay attention to it. So basically, you're not paying attention, and you just gloss over it. So you can say, well, I've read the Bhagavatam 3 times in my life. If you ask them a question, they can't answer it. So what good was your 3 times of reading Bhagavatam if you can't answer a simple question about the Bhagavatam? So these are serious points. There's no such thing as glossing over when you're reading Bhagavatam, because every word has deep, significant meaning. Every letter of the alphabet of Sanskrit has a deep, significant meaning. Okay, so then it says, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.3, the Lord impregnates the external or material energy, and thus the total living entities later come out in different gradations, beginning from Brahma, the first demigod, down to the insignificant ant. Now, this is a huge statement. What does he mean? The Lord impregnates the external or material energy. So if you read the Brahma Samhita, you'll understand how he does that. He does not touch the material nature. He doesn't have, there's no sperm or anything like that. He simply looks at the material nature, and by his glance, living entities enter. Where do they enter? They enter the Shiva Linga, and the Shiva Linga is connected to the Durga Devi's yoni, and then it enters into the yoni of Durga, and from Durga it enters into the material world. Now, this is a mysterious thing. It's explained in the Brahma Samhita. So, although it appears to some people that Shiva is the creator of all living entities, but it's not true. But he is a conduit I looked that word up, conduit, C-O-N-D-U-I-T. You see, you learn English. We all learn English in Bhagavad Gita class. Yes.
A channel or a channel for conveying water or other fluid.
Yes. So it's a channel by which something passes through to enter somewhere. Okay, so the conduit is Shiva's linga and eventually Durga Mata's womb. Just like we're going to be celebrating Garbha Dandya. Now, what does Garbha mean? Garbha means the womb. So, to represent the womb of Durga Mata, they put a bowl on and put the diya in the bowl with ghee, and that's supposed to represent the womb of Durga Mata. And then people dance around it in the village. And then, when they do Dandiya dance is from Vrindavan. It's not Gujarati. The Navaratri, dancing around the bowl that represents the womb of Durga, that is Gujarati. That's a Gujarati thing. But the Dandiya, it's coming from Vrindavan. It's coming from the Rasa dance. Yes. So, therefore, everything is related to Krishna. Nothing is independent of Krishna. That's the devotee's conviction, and that's confirmed by the Shastras. So, usually, the Garbha, there's no sticks involved. It's just hands clapping and dancing, right? And then, at the end of the Garbha, there's Aarti. And then Aarti signals the beginning of the Dandiya dance. So, because everything is ultimately going to be related to Krishna. It's not independent. Nothing is, in India, nothing's independent of Krishna, but it seems like that because people over time, they forget or they deviate or whatever. Just like Bharatnatyam dance, it's all meant to please Krishna. Originally, that was the origin of it. So, most of the things that people are doing in India are all originally from Krishna's pastimes, or Rama's pastimes, like that. Okay, so, therefore, the relationship of every living being with the Supreme Lord is certainly one of son and father, and not one of equality. Sometimes in love, the son is more than the father, but the relationship of father and son is one of the superior and subordinate. Every living entity, however great he may be, even up to the demigods like Brahma and Indra, is an eternally subordinate servitor of the Supreme Father. So these are all major points, right? And then it says the Mahatattva principle is the generating source of all the modes of material nature, and the living entities take birth in the material world in bodies supplied by the mother, material nature, in terms of their previous work. The body is a gift of material nature, but the soul is originally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. These are all major points being made in this short purport, and each one of these points has a big background to it, a lot of history to it. And unless we understand that history, like Prabhupada is summarizing it, but you could go into every one of these points and spend weeks and weeks discussing them, right? Like, for example, when it says, every living entity, however great he may be, even up to the demigods like Brahma and Indra, is an eternally subordinate servitor to the Supreme Father. Now, how many people understand that? Not many. They all think that Brahma or Indra or Shiva or Chandra or Durga Mata, they're all independent gods, and they're all equal. Krishna is equal to them, Narayana is equal to them, Rama is equal to them, they're all equal to Krishna. This is the hodgepodge nonsense that's developed in India. And then even more hodgepodge, Gandhi said, all religions are equal. So, when you get all this equality, you get nothingness. You get everything goes down to the lowest level. It's just like you have kids who are A students, and they purposely put F students with those kids so that, and what happens? They get bored. The A student kids get bored because the F student kids takes them, a year to understand one point, whereas the A students, they understand it immediately just by hearing it. They say, so this is what's happened in many of the public schools. They used to, separate the A students from the F students or the lower students, and give them advanced teaching. Well, they still do this in many places in the United States, but they discouraged it at one point, and so they purposely put the F students with the A students, and then the A students, they all got frustrated because they were wasting a lot of time. Maybe they would understand immediately, and the other people never really understood. That's why it turned out for a long time that they were graduating kids from school without the kids even knowing how to read and write. Did you know that? They were, in the United States, there were graduating kids from high school who couldn't even read and write because, everybody has to be success, So, so this is unfortunate. Okay, so therefore, I'm going to go back to Einstein because it's we've been talking about it. Let's see, where is it? Yeah. So here's the smartest guy in the world, but he could be considered to be pretty dumb. And why is that? So we have a summary of his dumbness. So the summary of his dumbness is, number one, of course we discussed this already, he didn't believe in a personal God. And he especially didn't believe in a personal God who gets involved in the fates and the actions of human beings. But that's not true. Look, Krishna has involved himself big time with Arjuna and the Pandavas, right? Make sure that they win the battle of Kurukshetra and defeat Duryodhana and his gang of abusers. And we see how he came to the rescue of Draupadi, and how he's always supporting Kunti Devi and the Pandavas, and how he supported Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj, and down the list. What do you mean he's not involved in the fates and actions of human beings? This is dummy stuff, Einstein is just speculating, right? Because he had an aversion to the idea of a God who rewards and punishes. But yet, when he wanted to build the atomic bomb to stop the Nazis, he was doing something that punishes, right? Atomic bomb is a punishing weapon, right? And he insisted, he wrote a letter to, I think it was as soon as Roosevelt died, he wrote it to Harry Truman, who became president, or maybe it was before that, to Roosevelt, before he died, that you must make the atomic bomb. That's why he's considered like the godfather of the atomic bomb. And because they used his equation, E equals mc squared, which indicated to them that there was a greater source of energy by cracking atoms. And by cracking them, a huge amount of energy can be spread. And so that was the principle of the atomic bomb. That's why they rushed the experimentation and everything to end the war with the atomic bomb. Well, the war in Europe ended before the atomic bomb, but then they used it on the Japanese. It was meant for the Nazis, but then the Japanese got it. So, but he was the godfather of it. So he himself was engaged in the faiths and the actions of human beings. Everybody is. You're, as a parent, you're engaged in the faiths and the faith, not F-A-I-T-H, but F-A-T-E-S. That means their previous karma, which becomes manifest over time. They have accidents, they get sick, and you're involved in it. And you're involved in the actions of your kids. You don't want them to do this, you want them to do that. So anybody who's a person is engaged with other people, right? But he's negating this whole thing. He said, no, I don't believe in a personal God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings. And he also expressed his skepticism about an anthropomorphic God, such as the God of the Abrahamic religions. Well, we're not part of the Abrahamic religions, but that is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Although we don't have any complaint with them other than when they deviate from their scriptures. So when it says thou shalt not kill in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's one of the 10 commandments, when they're killing massive numbers of turkeys and chickens and cows and goats and eating them, we have a complaint there. Because we're not complaining that, in our scripture it says you shouldn't do it. No, we're complaining that in your scripture it says you shouldn't do it. Right? So that's a problem. If they don't follow their own scripture, then we have a complaint. Okay, so then he also believed in what's called the pantheistic God of Baruch Spinoza. So we went over these points, but we're going to go over them again real quickly. What time is it now? 7:29. Oh, okay. So, well, we'll have to save this for tomorrow. So there's another point I wanted to make today, and that was homework. So who did homework? Shrestha did her homework. So I want to read it real quick. It's very short. The homework was that make a list of questions for self-realization survey. This is a technique to stop people on Sankirtan. And so her main statement is, are you ready for self-realization? Point 1, have you ever questioned what the real purpose of life is? 2, have you ever wondered why this vast universe exists? 3, do you ever question why sometimes bad things happen to good people? 4, have you ever thought about why people have to die? 5, have you ever thought about why everyone seeks happiness and not sadness? 6, have you ever wondered why you are born as a human? 7, have you ever wondered if there is an absolute right or wrong? Very good, Shrestha. Very good questions. We will use these questions on Sankirtan. And we're going to have, of course, even tonight, we can use these questions. Because we have a cookie booth, and with the cookie booth we always have books. So we can use these questions and see if we can pique, P-I-Q-U-E, not P-I-C-K, pique, look that word up, P-I-Q-U-E, the interest of the Garbhadandiyas tonight. Okay, so very good, Shrestha, and that was our homework from last week. So the homework this next week is to carefully write down all the points that are pertinent, that differentiate Krishna from ordinary living entities. So you have 10th chapter, 3rd verse, Bhagavad Gita is one place. But there are other places in the Bhagavad Gita where these type of points are made. So you want to write down the unique exceptional qualities of Krishna that differentiate him from everyone else. Did you do your homework? Okay. So, that's homework for this next coming week. And everyone can do the homework. It's not just the kids. Everyone should do the homework. Okay. Are there any questions?
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
So with this purport, I think there are a couple of arguments I think one may have, and I just wanted to understand and how to explain those. For example, as we said that okay, Krishna is unborn, yeah, and then Prabhupada gave in I think that Bhagavad Gita verse we read also example that okay, some may argue that Krishna born to Vasudev and Devaki, right? But he is not really born because he appeared as in original form. But what about some and some? So in Dashavatar, what we have for
And what?
in Dashavatar, I mean,
Dasa avatar.
Dasa avatar, yeah,
Yes.
for Krishna. Like most of the avatars are like they are appearance. They don't born something. But some of them, like for example, Lord Rama or Bhagwan Buddha, they born to. I mean, I don't know. As a material person, we have to say.
Look, a sage produced a type of payasam and divided it into 4 parts and gave it to the different wives of
Dashrath, King Dashrath,
and
yeah.
and the 4 boys were born. There was no sperm and ovum and things like that involved.
How
So
about
each one of the, and then Nrsingadev, he comes out of the column.
yeah.
Right?
Other avatars,
So you
most
see,
of them, yeah.
It's not. It's each one of the avatars will appear in a very unique way. It's not based on plumbing, as we say.
Okay. There is one more thing. So we always say that we are part and parcel of Krishna.
Yes.
So when you say something part of parcel of and so
No,
it's
but
coming
based
out
on
of
Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva. We are part and parcel of him. So when it says part and parcel, part means you're connected to him. Parcel means but you're still an individual.
okay.
You
In
understand?
terms of connect, but it's not like we should not think this okay, this is a part of this book means it's coming out of that book or something, not like that.
You are eternally an individual, but you're not ever disconnected from Krishna. You can disconnect yourself out of forgetfulness, but that doesn't mean you're disconnected from Krishna. You just forget because of illusion. But you are always, I am, everybody is always connected to Krishna. And the proof is, he's right there in your heart, this Paramatma. Now, can you understand this? Not if you've got material education. You know, they'll say, oh no, this is all mythology. Right? But was it mythology when Krishna killed Sisupala and everybody saw Sisupala's soul merge into the body of Krishna? No. So he can do things. He can do anything he wants because he has infinite powers. But to understand that there's somebody that looks a little bit like us but has infinite powers, it's difficult for people to accept that. Why? Because of their jealousy, because of the false ego. As soon as we purify the false ego and turn it into real ego, then we can accept these points. But how do we purify that false ego? It's by Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saistana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. If you have to become Sadahari, constantly chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and understanding and hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then you purify that false ego and you understand who you actually are. I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. Just like someone is born, but as soon as they're born, they're given for adoption. and then they grow up in another family. But when they get to be 26, 27, or 30, they find out that actually the people that seemed to be their father and mother were not the real father and mother. There was another father and mother. But it took them 30 years to know that. And now they're looking for the real father and mother, right? And eventually they might find the mother or the father if they're not dead, or if they're not completely, somewhere else. And so in the same way, we're born and we think, oh, well, this is my father, this is my mother. But actually, we have a different father and mother. Krishna is the supreme father of everyone. And Radharani is like the eternal mother, right? So we have to, we're like that boy or girl who's born into a family, and right away they were given an adoption. And then, so they don't really know who their real father is. They say. So by hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we can adjust our whole concept of who we are, which means you purify the false ego, and then you're free to engage always in Krishna's service and be free of the modes of material nature, etc. Okay? So you don't know who your father is. But you're finding out. Any other questions?
Maharaj, in the purport it says the Mahat Tattva principle is the generating source of all the modes of material nature. So in this case, what is the Mahat Tattva? Is that referring to the material nature itself?
Yeah, Mahat Tattva is the sum total of all material elements. And it's the origin of the false ego. So we read that already. One second, I'll show you which one. It's in this canto. Let me see where it is. We read it recently. So it says here, Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and the mental speculation. The false ego is represented by three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Do you remember this? It was this canto 3, chapter 5, and we're in chapter 5, verse number 29. So if you want to know what Mahatattva is, we discussed it already just maybe a week ago or 10 days ago. Huh? So it's 3:5:29. You see how, you say, oh yeah, I read the Bhagavatam, I read it 3 times, I read it 10 times, but you ask them a question, they can't answer it,
One time, Maharaj, I gave Bhagavad Gita to one person in India, and the next time when I met that person said I read 14 times, and I was shocked. Like I've never read like even fully one time, word to word, and this person is reading 14 times.
Yeah.
But the person don't chant.
That means he didn't read.
Gloss over.
Yeah.
So, but I was very shocked, like hearing like 14 times. How?
See, unless you hear from a bona fide devotee, it's not going to really connect. It's not going to connect.
Yeah, reading one thing, but understanding the other thing. I think people, most of people read, but they don't understand. My mother also read like 4 or 5 times, but she doesn't understand so many things.
Well, we're in that situation also. How much do we understand, right?
Yeah, but I think that
But we're trying to go over it over and over again.
helps a lot.
Yeah.
Discussions.
Yeah. So now you know what Mahatattva is, right? Now your homework is to go back and read verse 29 very carefully. Right. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Hare Krishna. You see, the point is this important point, that is, when Prabhupada preached, every once in a while he'd tell a story, but most of it was philosophy. But nowadays, everybody likes to tell a lot of stories, right? And it's entertaining, there's jokes and things like that. But how much do people really understand? When you're being, let's say, entertained, you don't really remember everything. You don't really remember anything except that you were entertained, right? But when you're hearing philosophy, you have to really pay attention to catch it, because they're very subtle points and very profound points. And that has to be discussed. It's not simply hearing. You have to actually discuss it. So by asking questions, you begin to discuss, you see. And therefore, the whole Bhagavad Gita is questions and answers. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam is questions and answers. The whole Padma Purana is questions and answers. There's discussion. It's not just somebody's telling stories and some of them are funny stories and you're laughing that you understand something. There has to be serious questions about the philosophy. Then you begin to understand. Haribol. All right.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala
Bhakati Sadma Bandho Mui Savadana Mate
Bandho Mui
Nana Mate Jahara Prasade Bai E Bhava Toriya Jai Prasade Bai E Bhava Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Ja Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Kya
Shri Guru
Arena Koriyo Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Guru Charane Rati Aise Utagati
Je Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Prasade Pure Sarva
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल है जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
ज्ञान दे प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहा होते अविद्या विनाश जयते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जयते
वेद गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादाचाया एबे जास गोशेक त्रिभुवाना प्रभुपाद पतिता पवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामीति नामिने नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चाता दिशतारिणे नमस्ते शतादिशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Oh, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gora, Haribo.
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Pararajagachasta Tarasatara Shri Shri Mahal. His Divine Grace is Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sid Vaiti Gadadhar. Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sami Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur all glories to Samaveta. All glories to Samaveta. All glories to Samaveta. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Bhavani Ki Jai.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to the lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame spread all over the
We take shelter of his feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.